This paper will serve to prove that race theory in the African context, or in this instance, the South African... No.
Blacks always have a chip on their shoulder. Like, why should I feel guilty if I wasn't even born?
A pimped out ride goes hand in hand with an Indian guy.
So why do black men need more than one wife?
Surely we are all the same, right? I mean, I know this whole phrase of brushing off race by saying we're all special. Black, white, blue, yellow, green, pink, and purple. But it must be true. We are all the same.
I'd never date a colored guy. He'd probably beat me up or even rape me.
I actually don't have a problem with white people, but South African white people are really ignorant.
I never paid attention to any racial stereotypes or gave any negative commentary any serious consideration. Well, not most of the time, anyway.
Kom ons gooi 'n braai, bro. Just like bietjie vleis. Sal sef wees, bro.
I'm not disqualifying our history. I could never. But I'm also choosing not to internalize it. Holding on to the past can stifle our progression. Isn't that what all the papers, politicians, and humanitarians say? I suppose then, the core of my research will touch on where and how do we draw the line?
Juni 1976, 21 Maart 1960, 10 April 1993 en nog vele ander datums in die Suid-Afrikaanse geskiedenis sal vir ewig geassosieer word met haatmisdaad. Suid-Afrikaanse burgers sit met 'n lang en pynlike geskiedenis. Natuurlik verskil die vlakke van pyn, maar elkeen het 'n storie om te vertel. Natuurlik is die onmiddellike reaksie die van skok, walglikheid, hartseer en selfs teleurstelling. Maar Suid-Afrika, is dit nie duidelik dat wanneer jy negatiewe emosies kweek, dit in jou binneste groei en daar bly sit nie? Dra hierdie negatiewe idees nie by tot verwyte nie. 'n Suid-Afrikaanse nasie vol verwyte. Of is dit in die hak om rassisties te wees? En kan rasisme geregverdig word? Met hoeveel rassistiese bagasie sit ons as Suid-Afrikaners nog in 2013?
Kgethollo ha se taba e bobebe, empa kaofela re na le karolo e re ka e babalang. E ka ba wena o na le pale efe?
To me, racism is anyone who makes a decision or a judgment on somebody based on the color of their skin or their ethnic background.
To me, I've never really experienced racism because I've been in South Africa for quite a long time, and I've been working with different kind of people, and I've been working to all kind of races. Honestly, I've been working with my first job when I came to South Africa. I was working in Edgar's, where I had like Xhosa guys and white guys and also colored guys, and they really showed me what is love.
When I was 15 years old, I organized quite a big World AIDS Day event, and it was funded by UNAIDS, and I'd gotten it on the basis of doing a speech. When they got here, they saw I was white, and they were very unhappy about a white girl getting that kind of press coverage in this country. And it was just unbelievably painful to have somebody not recognize a good deed and a lot of energy that I've put in. I mean, I wasn't really alive or conscious during apartheid, but there I was suffering because I was white and that wasn't good enough.
A lot of people complain to me, like in workplaces, at the gyms, in churches. A lot of people they're going through is that like colored people in church, they see their own side. White people on their own side, black people on their own side.
Ek dink dit is net 'n wit en swart ding nie. Ek dink rasisme kan ontstaan by enige mens, dit hang af hoe jy grootgemaak is deur jou ouers. Jy weet, as ek groot gemaak word en geleer word om jou te haat omdat jy verkeerd aan my voorouers se voorouers se voorouers gedoen het, dan gaan ek outomaties rassisties wees net omdat jy swart velkleur het.
This other day, before the posting on 24 January of the Western Dam matter, I was reading Chief Albert Lutulu, and I find Chief Albert Lutulu to be a good example. Chief Albert Lutulu in his book, Let My People Go. It's a book that was printed and published in 1962. It's a very nice autobiography. That politician is presenting a very, 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 very crucial evidence of what used to happen in the past. He explained to white people what they did in this apartheid. To the reserves ne. Occupy only 13% of everything that you see, of all the land that you see in South Africa. So black people have 13% of all the land in their country of their birth. As I'm continuing reading the book of Albert Lutulu, there's a day that white people mark specially. Would say on this day we're going to go to Pretoria and celebrate our domination over black people. So what I thought on that day, I thought that, yo, God, because white people, they used to do this. They used to celebrate the death of our forefathers. We can still have our own day where we celebrate them. Why not? What does it mean to be freedom? You're in a freedom country, we can do that. The research came after the newspaper, people have wrote about the story. Or, that's when I started realizing, these were children, they were from school and they have nothing to do with apartheid. So for that reason, that's why we took the decision that we must apologize now. It's time we apologize because these were children and they have nothing to do with apartheid. My apology was very, very, very genuine, and I would like very much to extend my sincerity to the survivors of the Western Dam accident. Was very, very much. In that case is different. Like I've been saying, that the case of Western is very, very different. And it has nothing to do with my grudges against apartheid.
Ha talk say e khutla re buisana ka taba ena. Ho tselatelang ha re utlwa dikeletso tsa Chris Mabane.
How are we at the level of the family unit but the community and society able to speak to each other?
We can't expect an implosion. We can't expect that. I think our society is already at war. Zama Kumalo mag dalk fout gesien het in sy gedrag en daarvoor vergifnis gevra het. Maar is dit nie duidelik dat hierdie jong man met soveel opgekropte aggressie sit en daardeur heeltemal verkeerd verstaan word nie? Kom ons probeer gesels met 'n paar verskillende burgers van Suid-Afrika oor ons rasseverhouding in ons land. En kom ons kyk of ons almal tot 'n verstaanbare vergelyking kan kom wanneer dit gaan oor ras en rasisme in Suid-Afrika.
Kannete e bohloko taba ya kotsi ena. Empa aya o batlile ho tseba hantle hore na ba ntse ba phela ba ikutlwa jwang.
What happened on the 27th of March 1985?
On that day, my friend, and this is like my first friend I ever had, we were 3 and we were like neighbors. So even before we went to school, that was my first friends, and we went together to school. And she had to get off with me because she was taking somebody else's school bag home for them. And we got up, and as I looked up, I saw we going into the dam, and I still turned around to her, not laughing, but this is like weird. And as we went through this fence, the screams starting. And somewhere I must have lost my conscience during this time. And what I can remember, I remembered I came up with my face and the water was so quick. The bus underneath was full of water and it's like total chaos. It's people running around to look for their kids. Then when they saw like I was on the bus and I survived, was my child in the bus and some of the teachers who had to go and identify the bodies, because I think what they did is they identified the kids before they let the parents into to go and see the kids. They were asking, can you remember names? And I can remember this one teacher asked him, and my friend? And he said, no, she's dead. And at the end of the day, it's just not, people didn't just lose a friend or you didn't just lose a child. You a child, you lost for instance, the one family lost 2 sisters in one family.
Do you think Zama's apology was sincere, or do you think he was just pushed into a corner and everybody was now attacking what he said and he just thought, let me just apologize before, something drastic happens?
I think you're right. He didn't mean it. The more we start ignoring people like that, they don't have a stage and we can take their voice away. And people must learn, if people get onto a stage, if a politician or wannabe politician, and make rude comments or insult people, don't turn away and switch off the radio, because if we're not going to support the media, they're going to stop with that.
Se re bone hore kgethollo e ka ba taba e mope hakakang. Jwale ha re bue nnete Afrika Borwa, bothata bo kae?
Racism is not a misunderstanding or between friends, Imagine, even now, these kids that go sometimes to the same schools, then they're supposed to have a socialization in the northern suburbs. Immediately, when it's 12 o'clock at night, I must go back to the township. I do not have transport. And the white kid just go home, which is right around the corner, and the police will escort them. But if I go into my township, I'm likely to actually be arrested by virtue of my blackness, because in this country, blackness remains the illegal identity.
Racism is still alive and kicking in the country, no doubt about that. It may not be as high as it was in the past, as you'll know that in the past it was institutionalized. But because, for instance, those who attacked the guy in Magaliesberg, their cases is in court. So the fact that a number of these cases are being taken to court sort of minimize the prevalence of racism, but they are definitely there.
We need to go back and reassess the impact of the TRC. We need to go back and reassess the impact of reconciliation. Not a reconciliation that is facetious, but one that has got a sense of what it means to young people across the country, and it needs to be continuous. Reconciliation was not a 1994 project that started and ended before the vote. It needs to be one that is felt all over society for the next 30 years, 50 years, up until we've reached a point where we can say we understand what the generation that came before us thought.
So the idea that, we all come with backlash of racism is a denial of racism, because then it means they are not victims of racism and they are not perpetrators of racism. So Eusebius Maekaiser and a lot of other people belong to the school of thought that denies the specificity and the reality of racism as a form of oppression that specifically affects black people and benefits white people.
A lot of this has to do with the kind of ideas that we breed in our homes. The kind of generational curse that is still carried, the bitterness that is carried on. How are we at the level of the family unit, but the community and society, able to speak to each other? And this can only happen if we integrate.
We need to deal with the reality of what has happened here. If we don't deal with that reality, we run the risk, in my view, of perpetuating exclusion and strife. And then I think we can expect an implosion. We can expect that. I think our society is already at war.
Ha ha talk SA e khutla Race Relations Institute e teng kitcheneng.
Experiences.
Absolutely.
And like ordinary people saying, okay, I've actually benefited.
Welcome back, South Africa. Well, we've given you all the tools. We've given you definitions, we've given you a history lesson, and we've even given practical examples in terms of what is correct or incorrect behavior towards each other. Now that that's all out of the way, let's start working towards solutions. In the kitchen today, we've got Lucy Holborn, who is from the South Africa Institute of Race Relations, and we've also got Chris Mapani, who is a comedian. Welcome to the show. Now, most of the issues, whilst we're applauding, most of the issues with regards to racism recently has been young people who are having issues and, projecting racism. Why do you think that is?
I think part of it's because they didn't experience that history. They're less sensitive to the oppression, the wrongs, the injustices of the past. So while they're aware of them, maybe from learning from their parents or whatever, they didn't have first-hand experience of those things. So I think the result is probably young people are less sensitive, they're more willing to push those boundaries, explore stereotypes, and I think sometimes that can veer over into racism, prejudice, and so on.
True. Do you think we can reconcile? Do you think we can somehow deal with those issues and be a happy country without racism?
Actually, the problem is the communication, the parents. For example, I'm checking, for example, black people in general. Black people have this, I do not want my kids to grow up the way I did. I do not want my kids to go through what I went through. I do not want my kids to do blah, 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 blah. So, but what we do is that we do not communicate to them what is it that we don't want them to go through and why. So basically now, because we just say, go stay in the suburbs. And then like, why? What's happening in the township? No, don't. You know what I'm saying? You don't even tell them. No,
true.
you don't.
True.
So we're not telling them stuff. Like for example, I think few kids know that next to Gold Reef City, the theme park, there's that apartheid museum. They just know white people go there, happy, come back crying. I don't know why. But you know what I'm saying? So we as parents, I'm talking about, I'm part of them. We need to pass it on to them, saying as much as we say, listen here, we are living this life now, but understand that this is what I had to go through for this and this and this to happen. You know what I'm saying? So therefore, that way they can easily do that. So we need to take it back home and not leave it to Tatamadimo.
Tell me, is there, like, as a comedian, sometimes, I don't know if you do, but sometimes comedians will use race as being part of, jokes, being part of their material. Wouldn't that assist in terms of the situation? Help us laugh at ourselves and help us, know each other better and maybe try and dampen the flames a bit?
We talk about what's happening. So up until there is no white, black, Indian, Chinese, colored midgets.
I'm very insulted about the midgets. Yeah.
I know. Up until there's no such, and then we'll stop talking about it. You know what I'm saying? So it is important. We talk about it so that we know it's happening, it's there. You know what I'm saying? And the fact that you people, as the audience members, you are laughing, it means you know what you're talking about. If I can get on stage and start talking about space stuff and whatever, no one will laugh because they do not understand. They do not know what I'm talking about. But because you guys know, you guys can see the racism thing, you guys can, you know what I'm saying? So that's why you find it funny. So we need to talk about it up until you guys are
over it.
And which will take time.
True.
We have time.
And that's why we must keep talking. And sometimes, though, emotions flare up. Why do you think that is, Lizzie? Do you think we just don't know enough about each other? Or are we just not interested?
Yeah,
what is it?
I think the emotions often flare up because people don't understand each other. Also because often, especially through the media, if there's some sort of racial incident, you find the media will select the kind of opposite ends of the extreme to represent this is a kind of typical white South African, and they'll take someone from AfriForum or something, and this is a typical black South African, and they'll take, I don't know, someone on the other extreme. And that's not necessarily representing average views within the white community, within the black community. And everyone kind of forgets in the process that some of those views probably totally cross over and are actually exactly the same about a particular, incident or whatever. So I think it's this idea that actually we probably have more in common than we have different, but everyone's always focusing on those differences. Even this idea of the rainbow nation, we're talking about all these different cultures, whereas actually there's something underlying that's more common between us as our experiences as South Africans, our history, our country, all those things are actually common to us.
And where do you think, like earlier when we were talking about, the jokes and laughing at yourselves and stereotypes, where do you think we can draw the line between stereotypical and satire and outright racism?
It's really difficult. I think it is definitely a kind of sliding spectrum, and I don't know where exactly that line comes. I know we do it about ourselves all the time, very subconsciously. We'll talk about ourselves in a particular way, we'll talk about others in a particular way. And I think it's exactly as Chris was saying, we need to we'll never stop doing that until those different race groups don't matter anymore. And probably that comes down to socioeconomic inequalities, those sorts of things that actually make day-to-day lives of those groups often quite different. So I think, it's fine to joke about it. It highlights reality in South Africa, and that's what comedians often do. They reflect the country back to themselves, and that's really useful. But we do, at some point, have to get beyond those categorizations and separateness to realize those commonalities between people.
There shouldn't be a line in the first place, because I'd rather you say what you think. You know what I'm saying? I think you're more bad if you keep it to yourself than a person who's actually saying it. Because then if you keep it to yourself, then it's like road rage. If you don't talk, you're gonna act. You get me? So you rather say whatever you have in your mind. Say it, and then I know. And the question is, did we really deal with what happened before 94?
Yeah.
Because it was a big party. Like, the Madiba came back like, nah, again. Like, okay, apparently you can kiss. And then there was a party. Did we deal with that? Did you, for example, did a black person go to a white person and say, hey, this is how I feel, this is how I felt, whatever? Have you ever looked at a white person and then he said to you, I'm sorry, I understand what you went through? Because you cannot apologize to someone if you don't know what they went through.
Exactly.
And I cannot take your apology if I do not know, if I do not feel that you understand what I went through. So we never dealt with those things. It was just a big party, and then they were like, oh, okay, cool. Like, but shut up, BE. Oh, okay, cool. Then we kept quiet.
Yeah, and I think you're right. The focus has always been on the formal process of reconciliation. So we had the TRC and everything. But it didn't deal with ordinary people's experiences.
Absolutely.
And ordinary people saying, okay, I've actually benefited from this, or I was disadvantaged because of this on my day-to-day life. And I think that's part of the problem, that ordinary South Africans haven't had that reconciliation process. It's happened at the political level,
that's why
but not so much at the day-to-day level for lots of people.
Which is why, we've got shows like this where we can talk about it. And unfortunately, we've run out of time, but we do have a Facebook page. So please join us on our Facebook page, Talk SA, or on Twitter @TalkSA. Let us talk about how we feel about racism, but also bear in mind that the things you say sometimes do hurt other people. So let's keep talking SA. Until next week, hariboing, and let's keep talking SA. Thanks so much, guys. It was awesome chatting to you.
Se lebale ho kopana le rona Facebookong kapa re romelle maikutlo a lona ho 33120.